Grange, a very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections, to climate change, to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Le Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Voters punish President Emmanuel Macron as Marine Le Pen's far-right national rally makes historic gains to win the first round of a parliamentary election. Political row erupts in Israel after nearly 50 Palestinian detainees from Gaza, including Al-Shifa hospital director, were released. The government calls the decision by Shin Bet a security recklessness. A Chinese space rocket, Tai Long 3, crashes into flames during a test in the central Henan province after accidental launch due to structural failure. India implements an overhaul of colonial-era laws with new criminal codes, which the government says will help the country become the world's most modern justice delivery system. And Boeing agrees to buy its supplier Spirit Aerosystems in a $4.7 billion deal as it pushes to improve production safety after recent mishaps and glitches. Hello and welcome. We begin with a focus on Nigeria, where the country's Borno State in the northeast has witnessed a spate of deadly attacks. In Nigeria's Borno State, 3 blasts took place in the town of Gwoza that lies across the border from Cameroon. At least 18 people have been killed, including children and pregnant women. And at least 30 others have been injured in a string of suicide bombings in the town of Gwoza. Now, the attacks have reportedly been carried out by female suicide bombers. Authorities say in the first attack, a woman carrying a baby on her back detonated an improvised explosive device in the middle of a wedding ceremony. The suicide bombers also targeted a hospital in the same town. The third attack was later carried out at the funeral for the victims of the wedding blast.
I personally lost 3 of my, friends instantly there at that first blast. Thereon, afterwards, some people now started for the funeral of one of the 3 that I lost. At the funeral ground, another one also blasted. Afterwards, as the DG Sema said, because I spoke with him personally, he said they were preparing a rescue mission at the General Hospital Gwoza when another one blasted instantly in the hospital. And there was another one around the hospital, and there's other one in Hausari, making 5, confirmed 5.
Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has condemned the attacks, calling them desperate acts of terror. President Tinubu has vowed stern action against those responsible. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Nigeria's Borno State, roughly the size of Ireland, has been marred by violence for 15 years now. Thousands of people have been killed and millions displaced. Armed groups often carry out deadly attacks against civilians and security forces. Boko Haram and its splinter group, the Islamic State West Africa province, are the most active in the region. Boko Haram has deployed young women and girls to carry out suicide attacks. In recent years, Boko Haram has lost ground, but armed groups have continued attacks. The group seized Gwoza town in 2014. The Nigerian military, however, regained control after a year. The Boko Haram came to be known globally after the April 2014 kidnapping, where it kidnapped more than 270 schoolgirls from the town of Chibok, also in Borno State. Within 2 months of the kidnapping, the group carried out an attack using their first female suicide bomber. Since then, there have been speculations that some of the female suicide bombers may be the missing Chibok schoolgirls. Now, the conflict has also spread to neighboring Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. It has prompted these countries, along with Nigeria, to form a regional military coalition to fight Islamist insurgents. For more on this, we have with us Dr. Samuel Oyewale, who is joining us from Pretoria. He is a lecturer at the Department of Political Science at the Federal University of Oyekiti, Nigeria, and also a research fellow at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. Welcome to First Post.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Doctor, the bombings occurred in northeastern Nigeria. Is there any evidence linking these bombings to existing extremist groups such as Boko Haram? And has any group taken responsibility?
Thank you for having me once again. For now, there is no indicator or indication that a specific group has taken responsibility for this particular attack. However, given the nature, the details of the attack of the suicide bombing, it shows the signature of Boko Haram. This is a kind of attack that has been recorded in the past by Boko Haram. And Boko Haram is infamously known as one of the terrorist groups that is that prioritize the use of female suicide bomber, one of the highest use of female suicide bomber globally. In addition to that, authorities have linked the attack, blame Boko Haram for this particular attack as well. However, the group has not officially claimed responsibility for the attack.
Right. How have the local communities been impacted by these attacks, especially considering the involvement of women as suicide bombers in these attacks?
The use of women and young girls in suicide bombing and Boko Haram attack has become a recurrent issue in the northeastern Nigeria. So many people are now familiar with the use of young girls and women, mostly forced to detonate bomb in certain location on behalf of the terrorist group. However, the impact on the local community has been significant, because initially the idea of a terrorist is that young guys that are involved, radicalized or paid or brainwashed to join the terrorist group. But in recent time, we have seen cases of that change in attitude, whereby young women and girls are now considered as part of the network or the instrumentality of terror in the region. So the changes in the one of the changes that has been recorded in the local community is the perspective or perception of women involvement in terrorism. It has changed from male-dominated campaign of terror to the use of women as instrumentality of terror as well. Again, the idea that stability is returning back to the region has been shaken by this particular event, because the idea that has been promoted since 2016 has been that Nigeria is regaining confidence in terms of stabilizing the region, cracking down on the terrorist group, and returning peace to the afflicted region. However, with the recent event, this idea of stability, relative peace that the local community might have enjoyed, or the confidence that might have been developed in the last few years has been shaken with this recent and recurring attack by the terrorist group. Although the government has never truly defeated the group in the sense of ending the terrorist attack, but the decline in the attack has significantly built confidence over time. But the growing record of attack can actually challenge that particular optimism.
Yeah, and on that, Doctor, what security measures are being taken to prevent further attacks in the affected region? Considering the severity of the incidents, what is the government's strategy for enhancing security and protecting civilians?
Okay, government strategy has always been to improve security presence by increasing the deployment of troops and other security personnel, the police, civil defense, joint task force, and the multinational joint task force in the region. And with this recent recurrence in the attack by the Boko Haram, that means we are going to witness a significant increase in security presence in terms of checkposts and checkpoints, border entrance, and so on, that the community are going to witness due to this recent incident. Again, issue of engagement with the local community, because the security agency cannot do this work alone. Engagement with the local community is very important, because knowing or identifying terrorists is not quite easy. Unlike insurgent group or guerrilla fighters that will come in groups or in mass to attack a community. A suicide bomber can just be one single person ramming into a crowded place and detonating a bomb. So collaborating with the local community will be very important in this context, especially in identifying strangers and in questioning strangers, as well as deterring possible attack in whatever in a given location. So in addition to that, the local community in terms of the state government, the local government needs to work within the security the security agency as well. So it is a multi-level response from federal government to the local government
approach
to build confidence of the community.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights on the latest coming out of Nigeria.
Pleasure.
Shifting focus to Kenya now, after days of deadly protest against tax hikes across the country, President William Ruto now says he has no blood on his hands, as he insists he is not to be blamed for the protest deaths. Now on Sunday, hundreds continued their peaceful march in the capital Nairobi to honor those who died in the protests. Rights groups say at least 30 people died in the week-long protests that forced the Ruto government to withdraw the controversial finance bill introducing new tax hikes. However, speaking to Kenyan TV, Ruto put the death toll at 19. He said there would be an investigation into the deaths as he condemned the loss of lives. He mentioned that the police did the best they could. However, if any officer went beyond authority, action will be taken against them.
I am going to take action. I am going to work on this. I know what we should do, but I am also not going to be reckless and take the country into a crisis. I will make sure that I act responsibly and listening to what the people of Kenya are saying.
Ruto also warned of action against the protesters who attacked the Kenyan parliament last week. He said many of them are on the run but will be caught. Ruto also vowed to protect innocent protesters from criminals who he said took advantage of the unrest.
There were innocent lives lost, but also equally, as a person who is responsible, I must think about those who are suffering because they were innocent, but I must also be concerned about those who are suffering because criminals cause them immense harm. And that is the balance that I need to be able to lead a country. I must protect everybody. I must protect the protesters, and I must be concerned about their lives. I must also protect innocent people who become victims of criminals who take advantage of a peaceful, democratic process.
During the interview, the Kenyan president acknowledged that the government failed to communicate better with the public regarding the finance bill. However, he now says with the bill withdrawn, the country will have to borrow heavily. Ruto planned to raise around $2.7 billion with the new tax hikes. He now says there's needs to be spending cuts in many other areas and that the country should be prepared for a new reality. Ruto has also recently announced the removal of 2 officers from his government, the offices of First Lady and Second Lady, from the budget allocation this year.
There is no need for the office of the First Lady or Second Lady.
Third Lady.
These are offices that were there. But because we have to live within our means, those offices from tomorrow, this new budget which is starting tomorrow, they will not be part of our equation. Because in the face of what has happened, we have to trim down every other area. And in fact, not just those, many other spaces are going to be trimmed down to reflect the new reality.
The tax bill was a cornerstone of Kenya's agreement with the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. It aimed to reduce Kenya's debt woes, which stand at around 68% of its GDP. The bill's withdrawal now puts Kenya's $3.6 billion loan program with the International Monetary Fund at risk. The IMF requires regular reforms before it releases tranches of funding. The international monetary body has yet not commented if it would shift the required targets for Kenya after the deadly protests. And now shifting focus to South Africa. After days of uncertainty and disagreements, the country now finally has a government of national unity cabinet. This marks the beginning of the country's new coalition government. In the new cabinet announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa on Sunday, his African National Congress has retained the largest share of ministerial posts. ANC officials have secured 20 out of 32 cabinet ministerial roles. The party has kept key ministries such as defense, finance and foreign affairs, while the main rival turned coalition partner, the DA, has secured 6 ministries, including the Home Affairs and Public Works. Democratic Alliance Party leader John Steenhuisen will lead the Agriculture Ministry. The remaining ministerial posts are among the other smaller parties. While announcing the government, Ramaphosa said such a government of national unity is unprecedented in South Africa's history of democracy.
The establishment of the government of national unity in its current form is unprecedented in the history of our democracy. We have had to consider how to form the new government in a manner that advances the national interest, that also gives due consideration to the outcome of the election and that makes use of the respective capabilities within each of the parties represented.
While many of the ANC officials will keep their ministries, the party has replaced the International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor, with the ex-Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola. Now, the new cabinet's highly anticipated announcement comes weeks after tough negotiations. After the May 29th election, the ANC for the first time lost its 3-decade-long parliament majority. It won around 40% of the votes, while the DA managed to win 22%. ANC then invited all the other parties to join a government of national unity. Though the left parties refused, a deal was struck with the DA and other smaller parties after days of hectic negotiations. However, both the large parties remained at loggerheads over cabinet ranks. The DA had initially demanded 12 ministerial posts, but they were reduced to 6 after discussions. Disagreements peaked when, in the final offer, after the ANC replaced the key trade ministry with the tourism ministry for the DA. Both sides exchanged a flurry of letters in which Ramaphosa had expressed his frustration over the DA's demands. He now says he has worked towards ensuring that the cabinet represents diversity and a meaningful participation.
It is important that we deploy into positions of responsibility people who are committed, capable, and hardworking, and who also have integrity. We've had to ensure that all the parties are able to participate meaningfully in the national executive, as well as in various parliamentary positions, and that they should represent the diversity of the people of South Africa properly.
Now, even as parties have managed to be on the same page, analysts predict more challenges in policymaking. As per reports, the DA, known for being a party of white privilege, wants some of the ANC's black empowerment programs scrapped. It argues that these programs have only worked for the elite, while much of the black majority remains poor. It also opposes the ANC's desire to seize without compensation private land, mostly controlled by the white minority, and giving it to black farmers. Additionally, the DA also seeks to scrap South Africa's minimum wage, set at $1.52 an hour. This, as it argues, would make the workforce more competitive. So while the parties have pledged to work together to rule South Africa in an unprecedented coalition era, it is yet to be seen if they will put aside their ideological differences and ensure a smooth functioning of the government. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgence Africa. Amid reports of coups and crises that dominate the headlines from the continent, we get you positive stories that often get overlooked. People in the Democratic Republic of Congo are taking the fight against climate change to the dinner table. Forget about kale and quinoa. The Democratic Republic of Congo is going all in on crunchy critters. It's a buzzworthy solution, and it is not just eco-friendly, it is also tackling malnutrition head-on. With insects as the new superfood, the Democratic Republic of Congo is proving that saving the planet can be deliciously unconventional. Our final report gets you all the details.
Insects are considered tasty seasonal snacks in many African countries. Eating insects or entomophagy is a traditional practice there. In Uganda, termites and grasshoppers are commonly consumed by many cultures. In the African Great Lakes region, a dish called kunku is made from densely compressed midges or flies. For some, it's a staple food, while for some, it's a taste bud tingling delicacy. And now these insects are being touted as a sustainable food source amid growing hunger issues in Africa, especially in Congo, where malnutrition is a common issue among underprivileged children. Children are now combating the loss of nutrients and proteins via insects. At an orphanage in Congo's capital Kinshasa, thick palm tree larvae doused in a spicy sauce have become a part of their meals. A local NGO which runs 2 larvae farms is giving them fried larvae for food.
Tout début, l'idée c'était d'essayer
At the very beginning, the idea was to try to respond to the problems of deprived children living in orphanages. And we realized that just organizing visits wasn't going to solve the real problem. We realized that there was a serious problem of malnutrition and lack of nutrients among children, especially those under 5. So we thought, here's what we can do to solve this problem once and for all. Why not put in place a sustainable solution that can address both child malnutrition and environmental problems? So we turned to insects.
For centuries now, people living in several parts of Africa have been consuming insects, But in a time like today, where climate change is wreaking havoc on the planet, population growth is putting additional pressure on resources. The practice of eating insects has made a comeback. Moreover, advocates of insect consumption say that the nutritional value in insects are high.
As you know, it's not easy for everyone to have access to meat products. It's not easy. So we had to turn to proteins. Sustainable proteins, in particular from insects, because this has been scientifically proven. Meat does not have a higher concentration of protein than insects.
In 2013, the UN's FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization, issued a report on edible insects, and they endorsed them as a food source because of its sustainability.
Experts say they also have a lower environmental footprint, as growing a group of insects doesn't need a lot of space and effort. In the neighboring Benin, a group is breeding larvae or black soldier fly as animal feed. It's a bid to replace costlier imported ingredients for poultry farmers. Along with this, it's also providing employment to people who are facing economic difficulty.
It's an activity that's easy to carry out. It doesn't require much investment. It can be done just about anywhere, except where the climate isn't right. It requires a little improvement, but it's not a big deal. This means that it can be done by people who may have economic difficulties in obtaining an income. And a better income can mean better quality food, for example.
So it takes a very small land and very little water to make a lot of insects. So obviously it's good for the environment, and also we try to steer clear of animal cruelty, and
It takes a fraction of the resources to grow a pound of crickets as it does a pound of beef. And so the amount of water it takes, the greenhouse gas emissions that it emits compared to the livestock, the amount of land that's required, the amount of feed that's required, there are so many factors that just lead to, this is kind of smart.
The practice of entomophagy, deeply rooted in many African cultures, is proving to be a viable solution for contemporary challenges, amidst growing concerns over climate change, resource scarcity and malnutrition. Insects offer a sustainable, nutrient-rich alternative to traditional protein sources. Their low environmental footprint and high nutritional value make them an attractive option for addressing both food security and environmental sustainability.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.